Over the course of 100 days, I will simulate a prehistoric marine ecosystem. From the monsters of the deep to the semi-aquatic predators that walked our shores. This is the story of a world where survival meant evolution. But could even evolution save the creatures of this ecosystem, or are they all doomed to die? Well, to find out, it's time to take you back to day 1. On day 1, I began by creating my lagoon, which would house our monsters of the deep. The creation of this vibrant ecosystem alone would take me a few days, but now it's done, it's time to give you a tour. Our ecosystem will be divided into 4 different bands: the small bay, the coral reef, the Mosasaurus bay, and finally, the sanctuary. Each of these biomes would be home to a variation of different species, all fighting to survive. In the sanctuary, we would have our semi-aquatic creatures, while the other biomes would house the monsters of the deep that inhabited our ocean millions of years ago. But we would begin in the ocean, and we were not about to start small. Above the skeleton of the Indominus Rex appeared 2 mosasaurs, a male and a female. 66 million years ago, the mosasaur ruled the oceans of the late Cretaceous period, and our 2 mosasaurs quickly began making their way into the centre of the lagoon and exploring their surroundings. I named our mosasaur duo Brute and Leah, and watched them explore their surroundings. But for this ecosystem to function, we would need some competition, or perhaps some snacks for our mosasaurs. This is the Plesiosaurus, that lived during the early Jurassic period, roughly 200 million years ago. I decided to name one of our female plesiosaurs Ruby, but for Ruby and the rest of her kind, they would have to be very careful, as nearby lurked our mosas, who had now got their offspring to defend. This adorable baby mosasaur was named Waterfall, but he would not stay cute for long. Juvenile fossils of mosasaurs show rapid bone growth, similar to modern reptiles that grow fast to avoid predators. But the plesiosaurs were not to be outdone, and answered with some offspring of their own. Some scientists think that the plesiosaurs may have shown paternal care, travelling with their mothers for protection and learning to hunt. And in these waters, that would be their very best chance of survival, with danger lurking around every corner. The mosasaurs had now migrated over to the Mosasaur Bay section of our ecosystem in search of safe territory to raise their young. The plesiosaurs would be wise to keep their distance for now. In the sanctuary, it was time to release our very first creature, which came out to the usual sanctuary. This is of course the Spinosaurus, which in terms of size is said to be the largest carnivorous dinosaur ever discovered, and these 2 would be named Claw and Tooth. They soon reached the water where they would be able to swim and hunt for fish. For these 2 Spinosaurs, for now at least, with the sanctuary to themselves, life was blissful. The plesiosaurs, though, had made a critical mistake. They'd not stayed far away from the mosasaurs, and Brute was now on the hunt. This wily mosasaur was too fast and too strong for its prey, and got the very first kill of the ecosystem. This mosasaur did not even eat the plesiosaur corpse, perhaps leaving it as a warning for what was to come for the rest of the species. Given that their current competition consisted of only some small plesiosaurs, it was time for a proper challenger within the Mosasaurus Bay. Meet the Megalodon. This colossal shark lived as recently as 4 million years ago. With massive jaws lined with serrated teeth, these menaces hunted anything that moved in their oceans. This bull Megalodon was named Finn, and would have a point to prove if it was to dislodge the mosasaur as the tyrants of the ecosystem. The Spinosaurs were very happy in their waterfall sanctuary, taking peaceful walks on the shoreline, having pleasant dips in the nice cool water at the base of the falls, and even creating their very own nest and laying an egg in an attempt to start a family. If anything, they were far too happy. So the Suchomimus, their southern, skinnier cousins, were introduced. These crocodile mimics lived up to 125 million years ago, and had snouts filled with conical teeth, as well as strong claws, both of which were perfect for catching fish. But don't let their skin and bones physique fool you, these guys were more than capable of disrupting the Spinosaurs. And it won't be long before their African cousins meet for the very first time. But before the family squabbles came a family boost, with the Spinosaurus egg breaking open and a baby Spinosaur walking out of the nest for the very first time. With the infant wanting to be with its parents right away, the adult Spinosaurs let the Suchomimuses be, for now at least. Life in Mosasaurus Bay was surprisingly cordial. Baby Waterfall was doing fine, with it being perfectly nourished and happy with its parents, while Finn, who was in the area and keeping his eyes on the Mosasaur family, kept his distance, and didn't seem to have any interest in charging in and causing any chaos. Not yet at least. The Suchomimuses had now entered the Spinosaur territory, believing that they are perfectly entitled to the same lake. The baby Spinosaurus would now have to be cautious, and the mother made sure that she was between the Suchos and her child. One of the female Suchomimuses was named Snout, and didn't let the larger Spinosaurus deter her from taking a nice swim in the sunlight. While the baby Spino played in the water, the mother noticed that Snout was getting too close to it and took a defensive position, ordering the Suchomimus to clear out. The Suchomimus stared at the larger beast for a moment before deciding that the trouble wasn't worth it and swam off. Elsewhere, the Mosasaurs were serving further justice to the Plesiosaurs, who had committed the crime of being an easy food source in the lagoon. I felt at this point it won't be too much longer before that particular food source becomes completely depleted. Back at the Waterfall Sanctuary, tensions had now hit breaking point between the Spinosauruses and the Suchomimuses, with two separate fights breaking out between the African Spinosaurids. In the first battle, the Spinosaurus was on the offense, striking twice against its smaller foe. The Suchomimus, who was looking bloody, did manage to strike back before running off in defeat. Whereas though in the second fight, the Suchomimus seemed to be gaining the upper hand. While all this was going on, the baby Spinosaurus hid in the forest and could only hope that both its parents came out on top. The second fight didn't seem to be going the way of the Spinosaur, but it did manage to hold on long enough for the Sucho to run off. The baby was reunited with its parent, while one of the losing Suchos, who had been named Blue, used the water to help heal its wounds. If there was one thing that the lagoon ecosystem was desperately missing, it was another large aggressive species. Introducing a pair of Kronosauruses. These large pilosaurs grew up to 12 meters in length and had a powerful skull along with 4 flippers. These large beasts dominated the early Cretaceous oceans, and I'm curious to see how they will do alongside the Mosasaurus and the Megalodon. Heartbreak and devastation nearly occurred by the waterfall as one of the Suchomimuses attempted to take the life of the baby Spinosaurus. After biting the juvenile once, the mother managed to intervene and prevent the Sucho from completing such a heartless act. Fortunately, the baby managed to swim to shore, where it can run and hide into the forest. Unfortunately though, the baby's brain was not fully developed, and it decided to re-enter the Suchomimus-infested lake. The Sucho did not waste its chance the second time round, and lethally bit the infant Spinosaur, killing it in the middle of the water. The baby's body did not sink, instead it floated in the middle of the lake. Following this homicide, the Spinosaurs were now fully fed up of these smaller interlopes. Tooth took on Blue once more, and this time did not hold back, immediately grabbing Blue's neck and forcing it to the floor before finishing it off with a devastating chomp on the neck. Blue, like the infant Spinosaur, lay dead, an act of revenge from the parents for the fall of their child. But vengeance brought no peace. The Spinosaurs still carried a hollow ache in their hearts. One parent returned the still form of the floating infant, simply unwilling to let it go. The other parent, still shell-shocked, watched on as Snout, the murderer, continued to swim, not a single speck of remorse in its eyes. When Snout did eventually leave the lake, the Spinosaur ended its wallowing in self-pity and ran after it, challenging it to a fight for personal justice. The Spinosaurs, though, weren't the only family in turmoil at the moment. Waterfall, the juvenile Mosasaurs, was looking a bit worse for wear. It wasn't known for certain who or what brought the young Mosa to harm, but all eyes were pointing at Finn. Following that scare, the adult Mosasaurs were becoming even more vigilant in their territory, and when one of the Kronosaurs got too close, Brute wasted no time or energy in clasping onto the Pilosaur with its jaws and shaking it violently, rupturing the innards of the smaller beast. After making sure the threat was dead, Brute ruthlessly tossed the Kronosaur aside. Just like the baby Spinosaur, the Kronosaur's corpse bobbed to the surface. At the same time, and not far away, the second Kronosaur was hunted down and killed by Leah. The Kronosauruses were introduced to the ecosystem to provide competition for the Mosasaur family and to stop them running amok. Instead, they failed embarrassingly. These Mosasaurs are going to be a huge problem for our underwater ecosystem, and drastic measures may be needed for them to be stopped from bringing everything in the lagoon back to extinction. Following the death of Blue, the Suchomimus Alpha, there was a vacancy at the top that needed to be filled, and two of the Suchomimuses believed that they were worthy candidates. In the early Cretaceous period Africa, the best way to decide such a matter was a fight for dominance. The fight appropriately took place over Blue's corpse, and both Suchomimuses landed a bite apiece before the pale blue one seemed to recoil at absolutely nothing. As we entered day 25 in our ecosystem's journey, it was becoming clear who the dominant species of each territory was. With the Spinosaurs edging out against the Suchomimuses by the waterfall, while the Mosasaurs were running rampant in the lagoon, dominating the oceans by sticking together, barely giving Finn the Megalodon a chance to make his mark in these lands. More diversity was always welcome in the lagoon, however, and so a school of ichthyosaurs were introduced. Simply known as fish lizards, these small marine reptiles had giant eyes relative to their bodies, streamlined bodies for speed so they could easily hunt prey and evade predators. As they were released, the plesiosaurs collectively breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that they were no longer the cannon fodder source for the Mosasaurus. There was still bad blood between the Spinosauric cousins though at the waterfall. The Spinosaurs were still very upset about the death of their firstborn and were not reluctant to let the Suchos know about it. This Spinosaur decided to take a bite out of the smaller piscivore, but after it brought it no comfort, it decided to let bygones be bygones, for now at least. Another land species was now though about to be added to the waterfall territory. This is a pack of Pyroraptors. These fire thieves got their name when their fossils were first discovered because of a forest fire. Living in late Cretaceous Europe, they likely hunted in packs and were effective because of their speed and intelligence. Despite their feathery bodies, these guys are surprisingly good swimmers and could adapt easily to the watery environment they find themselves in. New life though was threatening all across the ecosystem, with the former Spinosaur nest now being claimed by the Suchomimuses, and in the lagoon it was revealed that one of the Ichthyosaurs were pregnant. And soon enough, a pair of Suchomimus babies emerged from their nest, while the Ichthyosaurs gave birth to about half a dozen babies, one of them which was named Speedy. I mean, just look at it go. The Pyroraptors were quickly settling into their new vibrant home, but one item still remains on their agenda: declaring a pack leader. Democracy didn't exist in the late Cretaceous, so they settled their manor in the old-fashioned way, with teeth, claws, and a lot of staring. Eventually a winner was declared, and a dark feathered one called Flame would lead the pack, hopefully to a blaze of glory, or perhaps to the fires of ruin. Time will only tell on that one. The Spinosaurs were still not fully over the death of their child, and were venting once more at the Suchomimuses. Will they take the high road and move on, or is revenge still very much on their mind? One thing is for certain though, the newly hatched Suchomimuses were playing a very dangerous game by entering that lake. The Lagoon ecosystem was blessed with yet more Ichthyosaur babies. They had been breeding like rabbits since they were first introduced, and it's a good thing as well, since the Mosasaur seemed to be particularly hungry for prehistoric dolphin. While the Ichthyosaurs and Mosasaurs were having fun in differing ways, Finn the Megalodon was watching ominously in the background. This giant shark hadn't really done anything of note in his time in the ecosystem, not been able to get a word in edgeways so far, and seemed, dare I say it, rather harmless. So I introduced a female Megalodon to the lagoon to give Finn something to do, whether that be a hunting partner or someone to start a family with. This gorgeous red and black shark wasn't given a name, instead she would simply be known as Finn's mate. Very, very flattering indeed. Finn's mate immediately spotted some panicking plesiosaurs in the distance, and wasted no time in chasing one of them down and getting a first snack in for herself. She's only been in the ecosystem about 30 seconds, and she's already shown Finn up. The plesiosaurs once again found themselves back at the bottom of the food chain in the ecosystem, being targeted once more by shark and serpent. The ichthyosaurs appeared to be thriving in their new home, managing to avoid the larger predators, most of all because of their abundance of speed and agility. Two traits that the plesiosaurs did not have the same affinity for. And things were getting even worse for the plesiosaurs, as this unlucky individual suffered the humiliation of becoming Finn's very first kill of the ecosystem. 30 days into the ecosystem's life, and Finn had finally decided to get involved. And just like London buses, the second kill came immediately after, when Speedy the juvenile ichthyosaur was found dead. Rest in peace, Speedy, you will be missed. For a while now, the Mosasaur family had been taking things easy, and keeping to their bay, but the Megalodons were quickly encroaching on their territory. It is surely only a matter of time before the two ocean behemoths battle it out. To further boost their odds of survival and success, a pair of Megalodon babies had emerged from a nearby nest, after Finn had immediately fell for his designated mate and fulfilled nature's number one instinct. With the Megalodon population now quadrupling in over the last 5 days or so, the Mosasaur's grip hold on the lagoon was now under severe threat. The increase in numbers though was no excuse for complacency, and since the juvenile sharks were born in Mosasaur territory, they still had to be very, very careful. One of the juvenile Megalodons was given the name Salmon, but his life was immediately in danger. Waterfall the Mosasaur had now finally grown up, and with the increased size came an increased appetite. The first thing Waterfall saw upon reaching full maturity was Salmon, and his mother gliding through the water, unaware of the danger that was watching them. With a rapid motion, Waterfall attacked, biting at Salmon's tail, a brutal chomp that caused serious injury. His mother went to defend him, but before she could get back at Waterfall, Brute erupted from nowhere, clamping his jaws around the adult Megalodon's skull, shaking and not letting go. Finn's mate died in the violence, but her heroic act of defending her child allowed Salmon to escape and live on. And with all that the Mosasaur's claim to the throne in the lagoon was now once again more secure than ever. The second juvenile shark was named Hope, and upon hearing the news of his mother's death, vowed that he would grow up and take revenge against the giant serpents of the deep. In some lighter news, and despite all the pain and suffering, the plesiosaurs had managed to reproduce, and from a nest emerged a couple of new juveniles. These young uns will give the species a boosted chance of survival against all odds. From the tiny though, to the extremely large, Brute and Leah were now having a domestic issue. Leah had been the leader of the pair throughout the entire ecosystem, but Brute now believes that he deserved a chance following the Megalodon's kill, and so he challenged her to a battle. The fight didn't last long, and by the end, it was unclear who was the winner of this fight. Over in the sanctuary, the Spinosaurs and Suchomimuses were still at war with one another, but incredibly, the Spinosaurs were losing out to their much smaller, skinnier cousins, and their control of the territory was beginning to deplete. After a brief retreat into the forest to regain their bearings, one of the Spinosaurs once more attempted to fight and take out the Suchomimuses. But yet again, this fight did not go its way, leaving it to walk away with its head down in shame. Elsewhere in the sanctuary, the Pyroraptors had built their own nest, and would become parents any day now. Well, the Suchomimus babies were still nice and safe with their parents, as the Spinosaurs were unable to get close to them. As for the Megalodon babies, their best odds of survival was to stay as close as possible to the cowardly father that was Finn. Given his lack of doing anything brave or aggressive at all in this ecosystem so far, their odds were not looking great, but if they stayed with him at least, they would be far away from danger. 2 eggs were spotted in the Pyroraptor nest, where they became the latest species to foster new young and become parents. While that was happening, the plesiosaurs took yet another casualty, once more at the jaws of the Mosasaurus. The plesiosaurs appeared to have been put in an endless cycle of life and death at this point, as every time they reproduced and more young were born, the Mosasaurus would hunt them down. Some could argue that this was a perfectly balanced ecosystem, as all things should be. This one juvenile plesiosaur did manage to escape the Mosasaur's clutches and will live on for another day, and was thus named Survivor in honour of this achievement. The same though could not be said for this juvenile Suchomimus, who was hunted down and killed by Claw, the Spinosaurus. After all this time, the Spinosaurs have finally avenged their child's death. Are they now on track to form a comeback and reclaim the sanctuary as their own? While the pendulum swings in the sanctuary once more, there was little doubt as to who the ruler of the Lagoon is. And to make matters worse for the remaining species of the deep, the Mosasaurs have had another baby. This young one was sure to make a mark for itself, and to build on the legacy that its parents had created. It was named Bite, and we are sure to watch its career with great interest. What the Mosasaurs could do, the plesiosaurs could also do. In an act of rebellion and retaliation of an extreme manner, the plesiosaurs had had more babies. The Mosasaurs were pretty over the moon about this. The Lagoon, however, wasn't the only territory with new life, as the Pyroraptor eggs finally hatched, and 2 tiny chickens emerged from the nest. This one took an immediate interest in her tail, and thus was named Taily, while her brother was named Larry. When they first set eyes on each other, it looked as though they were immediately at each other's throat, but it turned out to be playful bonding before they went out to look for their parents. But in the sanctuary itself, the tried, true and standard were taking place. The Suchomimuses and Spinosauruses were still battling for the rights to rule this land ecosystem. Both Spinosaurs fought with 2 of the Suchos, and both Spinosaurs ended up running from the fight. In the Lagoon, while the Mosasaurs were seemingly on parental duties, the plesiosaurs were taking true advantage of their respite to create even more babies of their own and further add to the species total, breeding their way out of endangerment. Following their little squabble earlier, Brute and Leah were now once again getting on like Romeo and Juliet, with just as much death and destruction. In the background though, Finn the Megalodon was still watching, and it is plausible that this shark may still have revenge on his mind. After spending all of their lives in the forest, the Pyroraptors began to move towards the sanctuary. However, they were intercepted by Tooth the Spinosaurus. Tooth, who was bereft of all confidence at this point, did not so much as engage with as much smaller raptors, instead merely stared at them, unsure as what to do. Tooth was so starved of conviction that he couldn't even bring himself to kill the sleeping baby. Then again, Tooth knows all too well what it's like to lose a child, and perhaps he was being empathetic and walked away. The rest of the Pyroraptors had stayed all the way south of the waterfall, away from the chaos, proving why they are thought to be one of the smartest dinosaur species to ever live. But hope was not all lost for the Spinosaurs, as 2 eggs were spotted in their nest. The prospect of becoming parents once more sparked some newfound life in the Spinosaurs, who had now returned to screaming at the Suchomimuses, demanding that they leave the lake as soon as possible. One species not on the comeback, however, is the Megalodon. Hope, the chosen one, who was brought in to bring balance to the Lagoon, was murdered, cruelly and viciously by Brute, who then indignantly tossed the body aside with his tail. And not long after that, Salmon was also killed by the Mosasaurs. Finn was left alone to mourn the loss of his children and his partner. Meanwhile, the Mosasaurs celebrated by biting chunks off each other. Most people probably celebrate with champagne, but each to their own. All this meant now that the Mosasaurs were now the undisputed, undeniable, unbeatable champions of the lagoon. These were exciting times, however, in the sanctuary forest, as the Spinosaurs were parents once again. A pair of twins had emerged from the nest. However, tragedy would strike once again. A Suchomimus chased and attacked one of the juveniles as soon as it left the forest, right in front of one of the parents. The baby managed to get back up and flee, earning it the name of Runaway, but unfortunately, Runaway's luck didn't last long, as the Suchomimus was tenacious, striking the baby down and leaving the Spinosaurs back with only the one child. The poor Spinosaurs really don't seem to be able to catch a break at this point. But the Spinosaurs weren't the only creatures that had been busy, as 3 other newborns had entered the sanctuary. These of course emerged from a Pyroraptor nest, and these parents were for sure hoping that they had better luck with their child raising than the Spinosaurs do. Not just new life, but a whole new species was added to the lagoon, the Atenborosaurus. These long-necked marine reptiles from the early Jurassic were named after the legendary Sir David Attenborough, whose brother incidentally was the owner of the original Jurassic Park. If there is any dinosaur species with a legacy to uphold, it's these guys. In an ecosystem where carnage occurs on the daily, the juvenile Suchomimuses had managed to survive unharmed all this time by obediently following and sticking with its parents all its life. But sadly, this didn't last long. While its elders were working overtime to deal with the nuisances of both the Spinosaurs and now the Pyroraptors, this young Suchomimus got separated from its parents and was chased down by a Pyroraptor. The baby Sucho was injured by the raptor, but fortunately lived to tell the tale. This Pyroraptor in itself was given the name Hero because I am heartless. The new Atenborosaurus was loving their new lagoon life, and they were basking at the surface, frolicking through the kelp beds, and playfully socialising with their siblings. I'm sure that every other species in this murderous hellhole is jealous of how much fun they're having. Back in the sanctuary, the Spinosaurs were now getting truly fed up with the little rapscallions that have invaded their own peaceful and flourishing ecosystem. It decided to take matters into its own claws and chase down one of the baby Pyroraptors back to the forest. Karma did strike quickly though, as the parents didn't seem too keen on the giant bully and decided to attack the Spinosaur back, latching themselves onto its body, clawing and biting at it at every opportunity they could get. The Spinosaur flung them off first, but the raptors persisted, trying once more, but also unsuccessfully. This time, one of the raptors was fatally wounded in the process. The Spinosaurus relished in its victory, while a third Pyroraptor could only watch and scream in fury. All that death, violence, anger and pain was light years away from how the Atenbosauruses were feeling. Not only were they the happiest animals in the whole ecosystem, but they were also now parents as well. Every other species in the ecosystem were writing angry letters to the scriptwriter, wondering why they're not having such happy lives. The young Suchomimuses who survived the Pyroraptor attack not that long ago had now fully grown up, and was swimming and fishing with one of its parents. It was given the name of Miracle, to highlight its unlikely survival against the pesky raptors. Tooth the Spinosaurus once again tried to challenge the Suchomimuses at the lake, but immediately off the bat, things were not looking good for him, with many cuts and scars appearing all over his body. He managed to land a bite back, but ultimately fled the scene once more, failing again to reclaim the lake. Closer checks showed he'd only survived with a fraction of his health and was unlikely to have survived another hit from the Sucho. It was a good job that he made his way out of the fight when he could. And despite the loss of its packmates earlier on, the surviving Pyroraptor didn't dwell on it, and was instead having a lovely time swimming in the lake. Bites was having a wonderful time in the ecosystem so far, swimming behind its mother and following her wherever she went. Even though they were the undisputed rulers of the lagoon, for baby Bite, danger was always around. Finn was now tired of his passive life and was filled with rage and revenge. He separated the baby from its mother and chased after it through the kelp beds. When the baby slowed because of its undeveloped flippers, Finn took the chance, killing the baby Mosasaur with 2 clean bites. After the Mosa took its children from him, Finn exchanged an eye for an eye. But Finn was not done there, and he was now on a full-on rampage, following this by swallowing a plesiosaur whole. A sky view of the lagoon showed many corpses of violence in this lagoon, including some of the happy-go-lucky Atenborosaurs, many of them now attributed to Finn. Pennywise was right, they do all float. It was clear now that all-out war was happening in the lagoon. The Mosasaurs, furious at the murder of Bite, were also on a killing spree. They killed an Atenborosaurus by bumping into it, chewed on an Enquiries, and then swallowed an entire plesiosaur. Tensions were at an all-time high when Finn entered their territory, swimming around them, tailing them, and simply scouting them. The Ichthyosaurs had managed to fight back against extinction and had produced 2 new baby dolphins, but they weren't safe as one of the babies was immediately killed by a Mosasaur and bobbed up to the surface. While Finn swam through the kelp beds once more, spotting a lone Atenborosaurus, and any marine reptile on its own in this lagoon just didn't last very long at this point. Finn clamped it in its jaws and swung violently, immediately killing the larger plesiosaur. Even the biggest predators at this point weren't coming out completely unharmed in this constant violence, and Leah had picked up a sprain. But as we entered the final 25 days of this ecosystem, a trio of Dunkleosteus entered the ecosystem. These giant armoured fish lived around 360 million years ago, making them the oldest creature in this ecosystem. Perhaps they could show that the old ways are the best ways, and put Finn and the Mosas in their place. Also arriving in the sanctuary were 3 Baryonyxes. These British piscivores were slightly smaller than the Suchomimuses, possessed long crocodilian snouts with conical teeth, as well as a long curved claw on each hand, where they got their name Heavy Claw. In the same way these Suchomimuses had disrupted the spinosaurs, could the Baryonyxes displace the Suchos and become the rulers of the sanctuary in a top underdog story? With only 20 days left now, they would have to make their mark quick. But there had been more activity in the Suchomimus nest. Suchomimus triplets had emerged from their eggs and immediately went swimming with their parents, acting like dinosaurs 10 times their age. The Suchomimus' grip hold on the sanctuary lake is now all but confirmed. Along with the arrival of their children, one of their members finally managed to defeat Tooth in combat. The giant Spinosaur fell, leaving Claw a widow. After a brief intermission where yet another plesiosaur found itself victim to a Mosasaurus, the Baryonyxes were facing their first action of the ecosystem, as a pair of Pyroraptors decided to single one out and take it on. With their child watching, the raptors only attacked one at a time at first, latching on and clawing at the British Spinosaurid. After the Bary repeatedly threw them off, they decided to up their game and both attacked at the same time. But still, the Baryonyx's defense did not falter, and it repeatedly tossed them off with ease. The raptors were tenacious, but the Bary's resolve was stronger. The fight did not end until one of the raptors was eventually killed, and the surviving parent called off the attack. But now in the lagoon, it was the fight of all fights, the clash of the ocean titans. Waterfall the Mosasaur tried to get revenge on Finn, after he was attacked as a child. At first, it looked like Waterfall had the contest won early, performing the same neck bite and shake that had killed Finn's partner all those days ago. But Finn was made of stronger stuff, and shook off the Mosasaur in an attack that did more damage to the Mosasaur than Finn had actually taken. To help heal, Waterfall turned his attention to a plesiosaur and had a pleasant snack. This fight would have to be answered on another day. Finn for his part turned his attention to the new donkeys. After attempting to bite one of the fin of the dunks, it found out that it was trying to bite into a slab of concrete and gave up on that endeavour. The sanctuary lake was now teeming with Suchomimuses, as they were multiplying and didn't have anything left to fear. While the Mosasaurs continued to put their mouths around anything that moved, this time an Ichthyosaur being the victim. The lagoon was showing no signs of calming down anytime soon, as pain and death were daily occurrences. Finn had finally figured out the correct way to attack the donkeys by grabbing it in its mouth and shaking, while yet another Ichthyosaur became a victim of the Mosasaur's constant bloodlust. A pair of baby Dunkleosteus had emerged from a lagoon nest, looking ever so cute. But given the way the lagoon has been going in the last couple of days, their odds of survival were a long shot. I watched as a single Ichthyosaur proceeded to pass away without being brutally murdered, a rare sight in the lagoon. Whether it starved to death or simply gave up the will out of loneliness, we may never know. Finn watched the Mosasaurs from afar. He knew that his only chance of returning the lagoon to balance was taking out these Mosasaurs, but he also knew that his chances of success were small. There was still a tiny chance for the Pyroraptors to regain their stance in the ecosystem, as Larry the juvenile was now nearly at adulthood. These two baby Dunkleosteus hit an extreme patch of bad luck as they crossed paths with Leah. This adult Mosasaur took down the first baby dunk with ease, and then went off to chase the other juvenile fish. Despite its best efforts, the young dunk could not survive a bite from the Mosa, as its armour was not fully developed yet. Their lives were short and not very sweet. And sadly, the last living Ichthyosaurs was hunted down by one of the Mosasaurs, and the dolphins were now, once again, extinct. Could this now have a devastating effect on the lagoon ecosystem, given that an easy food source has now been eradicated? I was notified that Larry the Pyroraptor had now fully matured. The first thing that Larry did upon full growth was argue with a Baryonyx, after watching it kill one of his parents not that long ago. Fortunately for Larry, the squabble did not turn into a full-on fight. But in the lagoon, a fight was taking place, and a big one at that. Finn was going in for round 2 against the Mosasaurus. This time Brute was his competitor. After his last encounter ended in a stalemate, Finn wanted a definite winner this time, and in his favour ideally. Though it didn't get off to the best start for the shark, as Brute attacked first, clasping his teeth around Finn's neck and not letting go. It shook the shark for a long time, before eventually Finn broke free. Then it was Finn's turn to get a bite in on Brute's neck. Only Finn didn't fail to secure the kill. This once passive Megalodon had done it. Finn swam away while Brute slowly bobbed to the surface. The Mosasaur's dominion on the ecosystem was now crumbling. In his greed, Waterfall had hunted every food source available in his territory, and with nothing else left to eat, he had now starved to death. Waterfall had learned one of nature's biggest lessons, the hard way, and far too late. With Finn swimming happily at one end of the ecosystem, basking in his victory over Brute, at the other end of the lagoon, Leah was also suffering from the same fate that fell to Waterfall, as she was slowly starving to death. After taking a look at her stats across the whole 100 days, she had collected 17 kills, as well as a single combat kill, which was Finn's mate. She had won 2 fights, but had also lost 5 fights. Overall, they were decent stats, and she had lived an eventful life in this ecosystem, but in the end, she succumbed to her hunger. Within the short span of the final 10 days of this ecosystem, the Mosasaurs had gone from 3 in number and at the very top of the lagoon food chain to now extinction. An almighty collapse on their part, as they had become the victims of their own hubris and greed. With their deaths, the lagoon could now return to a balanced, calmer state. Plesiosaurs, Kronosaurs and Ichthyosaurs were reintroduced to the ecosystem, and without the giant looming threat of the Mosasaurs, they would now be able to survive. At the end of day 100, the Sanctuary Lake and Waterfall were also at a peaceful state. The baby Suchomimuses and Pyroraptors played and chased each other in the fields by the feeders, while Finn the Megalodon enjoyed life at the top of the lagoon's food chain. Finn had played a smart game from the start. He didn't get into any battles that he couldn't win, and showed also an unwillingness to hunt for sport like the Mosasaurs did, which had inevitably been their downfall. Thank you so much for watching my 100 days simulating a marine ecosystem. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite creature of this 100-day simulation was, and I also want to know what you guys want to see me simulate next. Also, why not watch the video that YouTube has on your screen right now? They think you will love it. Thank you all for your support as always, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye for now.